President Trump is expected to nominate federal Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. Mr. Trump will reveal his pick to replace Ruth Bader Ginsburg on Saturday. And with just under 40 days left until the election, Senate Republicans are gearing up for a quick confirmation. Democrats warn the president's choice could reshape the law and favor conservatives for generations to come. Weijia Jiang is at the White House with more.
While on a three-state campaign spree, President Trump built up momentum for the big announcement.
We are appointing a Supreme Court justice from Ohio.
Tonight, CBS News has learned the president is expected to nominate federal appeals judge Amy Coney Barrett to replace Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. The 48-year-old mother of 7 was an early frontrunner, especially after the president considered her to replace Justice Anthony Kennedy in 2018. Barrett clerked for conservative icon Justice Antonin Scalia and became a favorite among religious groups for her anti-abortion views. This week, Barrett made 2 trips to the White House and met with President Trump. He's pushing Congress to confirm her before Election Day, arguing a full court could be needed to rule on the results.
It's going to be a fantastic night, November 3rd. Now, I don't know, with this ballot situation.
Mr. Trump says he may not accept the results of the race if voters mail in their ballots, despite his own FBI director, Christopher Wray, saying there is no evidence of fraudulent voting by mail. White House Chief of Staff Mark Meadows doubted Wray's competence.
With all due respect to Director Wray, he has a hard time finding emails in his own FBI, let alone figuring out whether there's any kind of voter fraud.
Meadows also suggested some mail-in ballots should not count.
Should we allow votes to come in and be counted a week after November 3rd? I don't believe so.
But at least 18 states and Washington, D.C. accept ballots after Election Day, as long as they are postmarked by then. The Biden team, anticipating a fierce fight over voting, has hundreds of attorneys nationwide standing ready.
The last thing we need is, the equivalent of a coup. I mean, this is not who we are. We'll have an election in this country as we always have had, and he'll leave.
Judge Barrett is already well known on Capitol Hill, having just gone through the confirmation process in 2017 to become a federal judge. Republicans consider her a sure bet, but some Democrats have suggested they will refuse to meet with Barrett before her hearing to become a justice. Lana?
All right, Weijia, thank you. Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg was honored at the U.S. Capitol on Friday. The historic ceremony closed a week of public memorials. Crawford reports.
Ready, step. Ready, step.
Even in death, she made history. The first woman to lie in state in the U.S. Capitol, the first Jewish person, and the first time for an associate justice of the Supreme Court. In the private service for family, close friends, and members of Congress, Rabbi Lauren Holtzblatt spoke of Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg's brilliance and her persistence.
Justice did not arrive like a lightning bolt. As a lawyer, she won equality for women and men, not in one swift victory, but brick by brick, case by case, through meticulous, careful lawyering. She changed the course of American law.
Singer Denise Graves struck up a friendship with Ginsburg that began over their shared love of opera. Another tribute, her personal trainer Bryant Johnson, 3 push-ups at the casket. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden and Senator Kamala Harris also paid respects. And as Ginsburg's casket left the Capitol, female members of Congress, Democrat and Republican, lined the steps, coming together in gratitude for a woman who blazed the path forward for all of us. Crawford, CBS News, Washington.
For a deeper dive, let's bring in Carter Snead. He's the director of the Notre Dame Center for Ethics and Culture. He's also a professor of political science and a concurrent professor of law at Notre Dame University, where Judge Barrett has served on the faculty since 2002. Professor Snead, Carter, as we mentioned, CBS News has learned that President Trump is expected to nominate Judge Amy Coney Barrett to the Supreme Court. What do you make of this decision?
Well, if it's true, it's an extraordinary thing. First of all, it's an extraordinary thing to replace such an icon as Justice Ginsburg, an extraordinary trailblazer and an amazing woman in so many ways. But I can say that as a friend of Judge Barrett's for the past 16 years, she is an amazing woman in her own right. She is deeply kind, generous, open-minded, and hope if she's appointed and confirmed, hopefully she'll be I have every confidence that she'll be a worthy successor to the late great Justice Ginsburg.
Well, let's talk about that possibility of confirmation. Senate Republicans are pushing ahead with plans to confirm the Supreme Court nominee even before the official announcement. But there are less than 40 days until the election. Wearing your political scientist hat, how likely is it, you think, that we'll see a confirmation vote before the election?
I think that it's certainly possible. The president exercised his constitutional authority to appoint, or will very shortly, tomorrow, I guess at 5 p.m., appoint a justice to fill that seat. And then the Senate has the prerogative and the constitutional authority to act on that or to not act on that, and to do so in whatever manner the leadership of the Senate chooses. And so from what I'm hearing, based on the news, it sounds as though the Senate Majority Leader McConnell plans to press ahead, hold hearings expeditiously, and get the confirmation completed prior to the election.
Well, there are some liberal organizations that are expressing concerns about Judge Barrett's positions, including her critique of Chief Justice Roberts' position on Obamacare and her call for a rehearing of Pence's abortion law, among other issues. Judge Barrett, as you mentioned, is a friend of yours. So what do you say to her in her defense to these critics?
Sure. Judge Barrett, when she was nominated to the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit, said under oath, and I believe meant it, that she would never import any of her personal views, her political views, her ideological views into her role as a judge, into her jurisprudence. And rather, she follows in the mold of her mentor, Justice Scalia, who on statutory interpretation matters will look to the plain meaning of the statute, and on constitutional questions will perform an inquiry into the text as it was originally understood, as well as the tradition and the history surrounding that text. And so for those who are concerned about Judge Barrett, I can assure them that there's no way in which her personal views will ever enter into her decision-making. And she will do her level best with an open mind and a brilliant mind, which has been widely recognized both by folks across the ideological spectrum, that she will do her level best to find the right answer. And I think really that's the best one could ever ask of any judge, regardless of what party appointed them or what their background was.
But even if we all agree that that Judge Barrett has a record in which she says that she doesn't let her personal opinions, her Catholic faith, influence her decisions as a judge, Ginsburg's passing left the court with 3 liberal-leaning justices and 5 conservative ones. She is an originalist. She's a conservative. She clerked under Justice Scalia. Can you remind viewers what's at stake with the next Supreme Court pick and why people who think that the Supreme Court ought to be more balanced might have concerns?
Sure, of course. So I think what you just said is exactly right. Namely, the way to think about justices is not through the lens of partisan politics or through the lens of electoral politics, conservative and liberal. I think the way one should focus on such justices is on their mode of constitutional interpretation. And it is certainly true that with the passing of Justice Ginsburg, there are 3 justices on the court who have a very different mode of constitutional interpretation than the other 4 who are on the court, and with the other 5 who are already on the court. And so it would be 5-4 prior to the passing of Justice Ginsburg. And the distinction is between those who would consider more broadly sources of authority, normative authority, and making their judgments about what the Constitution means, versus those who tether their analysis to the text, history, and tradition. And the latter is referred to as conservative because those are generally associated with Republican presidents, although as with Justice Scalia, there's no necessary connection between a conservative jurisprudence and conservative political outcomes. Justice Scalia would frequently vote in cases on behalf of criminal defendants and procedure cases. He voted in support of the freedom of expression of various protesters who were progressive and liberal in their orientation. So a commitment to the original understanding of the Constitution doesn't necessarily determine the political consequences as we understand them in an electoral setting. What you can do is you can be certain that when Judge Barrett is on the court, she will always analyze the opinion or the sources of law, the statute, the Constitution, through the lens of jurisprudence, not through the lens of politics. Now, of course, there's heated disagreement about which approach to constitutional interpretation is correct, but that's one step removed from the political process. And I think if we want to keep justices distinct from politicians, I think it's important to draw that interpretive distinction rather than the partisan distinction.
Okay, Professor Carter Snead, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.